Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me tonight, I got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
On today's podcast, we're going to be reviewing some of the Champions League games that took place midweek, and we'll also preview some of the Premier League games taking place this weekend. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Where else to start, Gio, other than, of course, Copenhagen 4, Man United 3. This game, very much following our last podcast. Crazy action, crazy decisions, crazy game all around. So I'm going to let you take the reins on this. What are your thoughts on this game, and what do you want to focus on to begin this podcast?
Just, I know if the listeners listen and if we do have fans, if the fans are listening, they understand that I kind of wanted this to happen, but not in this fashion. Like, why in this fashion? Like, get beat, get outplayed. 11 on 11, fine. So be it. If one person is that thorn, then let them be outed via this game. But the fact of the matter is, there was a very, very, very poor red card call given by VAR again. We just had a podcast explaining how poor VAR was last weekend in the Prem, and for them to do it in a grander scale, arguably the Champions League, to send someone off, when a team's up 2-0, and then for the team to come back. Obviously, Man U scored 3-2, and then, as we know it, 4-3 Copenhagen. But the fact of the matter is, that wasn't a red card. That wasn't a red card. I mean, the announcers were talking about it. If you're going by the books, if you're going by the rules, it's the action of it. The result of it, not the intent. The intent could still not be there, but the action itself that played out is considered, a red cardable offense. Now, it's very obvious that he was just trying to shield the ball to, somehow get it away. But I just don't understand how the referee can have VAR tell him in his ear and just say, okay, yeah, you should have a look at this. This could be potentially a red card. And he decides to go over there and look at it. If he didn't call it, how is VAR telling him, yo, you need to go back and change this call immediately? Like, the referee's still the referee. It's those calls that are meant for in the line. Is it a handball that the referee doesn't see? These are bang bang plays, and this is, again, not in the intent wasn't there. But I guess the big thing, the question is, how is VAR gonna affect the referee's decision to determine the intent of players and their challenges? So, I mean, it's gonna bring up the right questions. It sucks it had to be the Man U team that kind of had to deal with it. They were playing fantastic football. The best team football, in that first 20 minutes that I've seen in quite some time, albeit against Copenhagen. That first goal, like I said in the chat, I said that arguably was the best team goal they've scored all season. That was phenomenal in terms of passing into space, running into space, cutting it back. The execution was perfect in my opinion, and not from the players you'd expect it to execute, but the fact of the matter is they did it, and it looked fantastic, and they were playing fantastic. Give Bruno where credit's due. Give Bruno the credit where credit is due. He was looking to pivot and push that counterattack as soon as possible. I thought that was fantastic. All in all, it was good. Even Maguire was getting chances in the box from corner kicks. Things were coming up good for United. It looked fantastic. Onana was playing almost like as of a sweeper. He was coming high off his line to play as that almost, that 11th field player. But yeah, and it all went downhill from that lone red card. So obviously, I believe this game was decided by that red card. Yes, you can argue that Man U could have defended a little bit better. Their aerial defending is still very poor. I do agree with that. Johnny Evans having to leave, Rafa, haven't really playing a full game since his injury. A lot of things tied in to that loss, but the major swing factor, the X factor, was that red card.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's go straight into it for myself personally. Then, yeah, I do agree with you, Gio, in terms of it is a very, very harsh call. I can understand why it's given, why it may be looked at, but the fact that it's given after the fact that the referee, who is a professional referee, understands the game and the intent of the action, to go back and freeze frame it and look at it from one, just it's separate, just isolating that one action, could have been literally 1 second. It doesn't bode well with the game, which is free flowing, and of course there's different actions that different players take and leads to different intents. So I can see why it's given, but I very much agree with you, Gio. I don't think that was the right decision, and I think it's not just VAR. It's definitely a rule change that needs to be made overall. I think VAR is definitely taking priority in this decision making in these games over referees, and every time the referees asked to go to the monitor, more than often they will side with the VAR decision, and so that just irks me in a certain way, just because of the, I guess you can call, unjust decisions that we've seen over the last week or so. But apart from that, yeah, the game was quite entertaining from a neutral's perspective. You could definitely see Man U had a game plan, and it was clicking up to the red card, and then Copenhagen, being at home, brought it back and put themselves in a position to get a decent result. Like you said, Man U could have won it, and eventually, put themselves in a good position towards the latter stages of this group stage. But it ended up happening. A player with the name Rooney for Copenhagen eventually wins it for Copenhagen against Man U, down to 10 men. So I know we covered a lot, Mac. Any outstanding thoughts that you want to cover before we dive into, I guess, specific themes of this game?
So firstly, I want to give my opinion in regards to the separation, because there's two different conversations I feel like we need to have. One, referee decisions. Two, individually about the game. Because even though I think we would all argue that the referee did have a large impact on the game, I did think that after kind of any sense of adversity did hit Manchester United, they did wither and crumble. So it's not 100% their fault, but it wasn't as if it caused a penalty. It was a goal right away. There was opportunities for Manchester United to rebound and to recover, and at least hopefully escape till halftime, maybe still with a lead to then be able to reset. But because of their frailty, you saw them kind of collapse after that call did occur. I do agree. That's a yellow card on Marcus Rashford. All he's trying to do is be able to step in front. He's not looking to be able to stamp. He's not looking to make any contact there. There is no, and it's not even that high. It's not even like it's above the shin on the knee. It's just on the ankle. Obviously, you wouldn't want anyone to be hurt in that situation, and the Rashford could have injured the individual. Completely fair. But for me, I think that's way too harsh. And just coming off some games that we watched in the Premier League, in no world that's a red card. However, to be fair though, the referee is horrible on both ends, because I would argue Bruno Fernandes, the goal he scores to get Manchester United back up 3-2, which is a handball off Lagarger. I think that's how you pronounce his name. In no world that's a handball for me either. There's no situation there. That's just the referee again. As soon as kind of what you'll see, and the commentators are talking about it in the moment, where the referee goes to the monitor, the first thing you see is the kind of the still image of the player looking at his arm and the ball hitting a hand, looking like there was any intent in that situation. It's very similar to me, like the what happened with William Saliba. I think that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Again, there's no situation where he's trying any way whatsoever to play the ball with his hand. So I think it's a little bit ridiculous. It's very kind of that type of call, even with VAR. That's very kind of like schoolyard type of handball call you just make in reflex. I understand complaining and asking for it 100%, but in no world that's a handball. So I think the referee is poor in all accounts. The tough part is, and to be honest, it's weird in this type of game. I would rather have the goal against than the red card, because with the so uncertainty in some ways, where especially with how early in the game the red card did occur for Manchester United, it put them in a position where they were always a leg back. So it was very tough. I think it's a little bit unfortunate on them. But in some ways, for me, I still think they did a lot of wrong in this game, and I guess we can start talking about that now.
Yeah, for sure. I guess before we talk about some things that went wrong, I just want to highlight as well Hojlund, who got 2 goals for Man U. Started, of course, Gio mentioned the early goal there, and then, of course, the Garnacho shot off the break that landed at his feet. Put 2 goals in within 2 goals in, and then could have even had a hat trick within 30 minutes. Very much Erling Haaland style, 1 touch from each play. So that's, I guess, a positive there. But I guess let's go into some of the negatives. Gio, of course, the injury to Evans, not great, because then you're calling on Varane, who, yes, he has played with Harry Maguire in previous seasons, but I feel like, of course, with coming back from injury, not being able to defend well, and not even that, I feel like Wan-Bissaka hasn't played all that much this season. Diogo Dalot, who's more so a right back, not as much as a left back, gets beaten. What are some of your thoughts there in terms of the defensive mistakes? Because honestly, it just looks like a disjointed back 4. Whereas, if they were able to hold out and stand firm against some of those chances that they conceded in the end, it could have been a positive result for Man U. What are your thoughts there, Gio?
Yeah, no, I think this is one of those things that are showing more and more, is that yes, the injuries on to our line is really showing because of how we're trying to bandage situations, and the fact that the key point is that it's something that Mac has pointed out time and time again, is that they've brought in players to sort of fix the problem now, and it's just, yes, they're injured, but they're just not as athletic as they were maybe a couple of years ago when they should have signed them, or when a team is on the brink of greatness decides to bring a player like that in. You're expecting them to do a lot of things that they could do, maybe in their mid-20s, in their primes, but they're tailing off away from their prime. A lot of these things, their bodies simply cannot handle anymore, and I think that's very much so the case. It was a sign of fatigue. It was the sign of the lack of communication from playing with one another, the lack of playtime with one another. It's just very clear as day now, clearer more than ever, that there's still so many holes apart from the lack of scoring, or say the lack of a midfield. It all starts from the back there, and it hasn't looked great. Obviously, bright spots from Maguire throughout the weeks, but a back line isn't just one person. One person isn't going to save a back line. Although Liverpool has done it with Virgil van Dijk. Another story, another day. But the fact of the matter is, Maguire isn't Van Dijk, so he's not going to save that back line. I don't think anybody in that roster can. So who's to blame, really? Who's to blame?
Yeah, and exactly the same question, Mac. What are your thoughts there?
Everyone, absolutely everyone, top to bottom, is to complain. There is no one that, in terms of blame pie, everyone deserves their big piece and should eat it tonight. It is what it is. If you're the best defender going against FC Copenhagen in a game you lose, is Harry Maguire, a player you try to get rid of over the summer, your former captain, that is an issue. That is not his fault. I think I blame him the least out of almost anybody there. Of course, some of the attacking players that have just gotten there, like Højlund, feel bad for Rashford. A couple players like that where, okay, you know what? It's just unfortunate, kind of the cards that have been dealt, but it's become a collective top-down issue, and it's consistent. This team at Manchester United, through 17 games so far this season, has lost more games than they've won. Manchester United, arguably the second biggest club in the world, if not the biggest. There are consistent theme of problems. And again, what is the difference between Erik ten Hag and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer right now? he has less hair. There's no difference. I don't see anything there. There's no progression. There's very little improvement. I'm very curious to see how things going. And top part is, and that's why going into this game I was very fascinated, because if they pick up a win, there's a positive momentum. James Ratcliffe comes in as a new owner, gives Erik ten Hag a shot, kind of invests some money in the club, and maybe that turns around his time at Manchester United. But with this type of result and potentially going down to Europa League, it's again still early days. They still theoretically could make it out of the group second place, but his time there, which at the beginning of the season I think we all went into it, is like he deserves the full season. Let's see what he has. And it's going to take time to be able to reset the culture at the club, but for it to take such a large step back compared to where they were at the end of last season is rough. So again, a lot of people deserve blame. Even like, again, players like Varane, Amrabat, they did not kind of shine with any glory today coming in as substitutes, I think, for both of them respectively. Mount, again, there's so many people you can individually look at and scrutinize. It's very difficult. So you just got to blame at some points, the whole institution in some ways, which is unfortunate, because when it's weird, because I think in some ways it is a better footballing world when Manchester United are at least a competitive team. And it just feels like a little disheartening to see that, it is, okay, maybe disheartening to other people, but I do enjoy it secretly a little bit, I'll be honest. But to see it falling apart this much, this quickly against FC Copenhagen, this is not where we were, and this is not kind of, if you're a Manchester United fan, this is probably as low as you've been, I don't know since when.
It's not looking great. Like Max said, bottom of the group in Group A at the moment. There is a slight chance that they can still make it, but from the likes of from the sounds of what you were mentioning before, Gio, this might not be the priority at this moment. It's kind of just putting out fires. Maybe try to, if you are out of this competition, try to finish as high as possible in the Premier League. And games are coming quick. Luton Town got a decent draw against Liverpool last weekend. Not necessarily favorites in this game at all, but Premier League throws up craziness week in, week out. So they're definitely going to be looking to get a positive result against Man U, regardless of what happens. So that's going to be something to keep an eye out for. But let's move on then to the another game from this week's Champions League, and that's of course AC Milan 2, PSG 1. Mac, a game where I think I highlighted it last time we were together. It was a must-win for AC Milan, given the fact that, of course, they didn't look great, and of course, going into this game week, I think they were last placed. And if they did take a loss this game, essentially their hopes would be they would be out of this year's Champions League. But of course, the what people are calling it, the Donnarumma derby, of course, him previously playing for AC Milan, turned out that it was a lot better for his former side than most hoped. So what are your takes on this game, Mac?
I think you kind of phrased it correctly. This was an absolute must-win. But kind of as a neutral going into this group, this opens the group wide open, and we'll talk about the other result as well, where anything could happen in these final two match weeks. These two teams have completed their two games against each other. I would argue, I feel a little bit disheartened from PSG from this particular fixture. You would have wanted to be able to get a little bit more out of them. I know you're playing away at the San Siro. That's a tough ground to play, but you would have been hoping for a little bit more offensively, versus it felt like they were barely just keeping it at the 2-1 result as is. Donnarumma, I think we were talking before the podcast, was playing phenomenal, standing on his head, arguably looks like one of the best goalkeepers in the world, and arguably is, and he's playing in a, let's just say, a not so friendly environment, the way that kind of a lot of the fans are treating him. So fortunate for him, but great to see he pulls out a great performance. But this is something that AC Milan absolutely needed, because Rafael Leao, when he scored Milan's first goal in the UEFA Champions League this season, it ended a run of 508 minutes without Milan scoring in this competition. So it's been a long time. And this is actually the first time Milan have beaten PSG in the Champions League since 1995. So they've not had great luck against this team. It's great to see them be able to pull out something, make this group a little bit more competitive, because at some points it did look like they were clearly the bottom ranked team within this group. So great to see that. It'll be interesting to see what happens going forward in this group between the other fixtures. And like I said, we'll continue to talk about that. But the big piece, a takeaway from me, I know it's I don't generally like to give former Chelsea players a whole lot of credit, but for me, kind of one of the best players in this individual match was Ruben Loftus-Cheek. How he played in midfield behind Olivier Giroud. I thought you were gonna. You thought I was gonna say Giroud there. No, I was not. Joke's on you. But Loftus-Cheek, what he was able to do in the midfield, what he was able to kind of when he was able to transition the ball from defense to offense, how is he able to kind of jump into tackles? Is kind of everything you would have wanted to see from him in certain games, and it's great to see that he still has it in his locker because he was definitely kind of behind the scenes at Chelsea, like a lot of the other players that have come over from Chelsea to, in fact, this AC Milan team. We know like players like Tomori, Pulisic, and like aforementioned Giroud. So it was great to see him have that type of performance, and I think that was separated between the previous matchup that these two teams played and this one here. And I think he was the difference, and it allowed Milan to get out, get on the break, and get opportunities for themselves, where as previous weeks, that's where they've been mostly struggling for me.
Yeah, I will go back to AC Milan. I think for sure they got the win, and I think overall well deserved. But as well, the game started in PSG's favor. Skriniar, the former Inter Milan player, of course, getting onto the score sheet to put PSG ahead. And even though it was a back and forth game in the first half, you could very much argue that PSG were the team that was more so in control. Gio, of course, you're going to have threats from Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele, and the likes of that attacking team, creating chances. What went wrong for them, considering that, they had the lead? It could have been just a sit back and hit them on the break type of performance, and you're basically top of the group of death, and you see it out. What went wrong for them, and I guess what happened with that eventual Giroud goal that won it for AC Milan?
Look, it's just the. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I may be looking at this a little too much. It might be a little bit of a reach, but I think it just shows the one-dimensional aspect of PSG is that they can't kill a game. They can't control a game via that midfield, or via the backline to the midfield. They have one dimension, and that one dimension is sending it down the wings whichever which way, and hopefully the fastest player will get there, and hopefully that fastest player on the field that day is Kylian Mbappe. And a lot of the chances do come from that side, and will always come from Mbappe. If not, he needs to learn how to play a more of a decoy type player to open up the field for the rest of his teammates. But they realistically don't have a midfield that can really kill a game. Such like we're seeing from a Man City, from an Arsenal, those types of teams, Bayern Munich even, you can put that in the group. But yeah, they don't really have any other options to go to. They don't understand to kill the game, knowing that they can easily secure 3 points and really just sit pretty at the top of the group. So that was really that. And that I was perfectly fine with the no stoppage of play. You play to the ref's whistle. That's always been the case since we were kids. And props to AC Milan for obviously playing it through, and we're definitely the more hungry team because they probably would have played through the whistle, knowing them, and would have also scored the goal. So props to AC Milan. They were the hungrier team that day, and they got the job done. And now they still have a fighting chance to make it out this group.
Yeah, of course, the player that scored that, Olivier Giroud, one of my favorite players, favorite strikers, of course, in the game. He did fantastically well to get on the end of that Theo Hernandez cross, which, yeah, it looks like it wasn't much, but the fact that he was able to meet it and just get enough contact on it so that it's not sailing over the bar, I think that's great for them. But as well, yeah, go back to the point about the midfield for PSG. Vitinha, Ugarte, and Zaire Emery could be a midfield three for the future, but definitely in this group of death, I would say they are the worst midfield out of all 4 teams. And so that, I think, has a big deal to play, had a big deal to play in this game, and the chances for PSG to eventually see if they will make it out of this group. Those were pretty much the most of the points about, I guess, this game. Lastly, before we take a break, I just want to shout out, of course, Donnarumma, his performance in this game. I don't think he could have done much for either. Well, for the first goal, maybe, but definitely not for the second goal. And he did have some fantastic saves. The Theo Hernandez free kick, Joe, that you mentioned. And I think even more, slightly more impressive, his save on, I think it was Okafor who came on in the second half. Cut inside, curling shot, far post, strong hand to get down there. So Donnarumma, for his sake, I hope PSG are able to go further in this year's Champions League. But we'll definitely see and touch on their chances in our next game that we're going to cover. But until we get there, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll be back covering some more Champions League action, guys. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue, as discussed, with the other game in Group F, and that's, of course, Borussia Dortmund versus Newcastle. A game where Newcastle was going to be... it was going to be a test for Newcastle, considering the number of injuries that they were carrying into this game. Lost the first fixture at home against Dortmund, and with that being in the back of their head, we were interested to see how they were going to do in this game. And honestly, it sounds cliche to say, Mac, but Gio, but it honestly was Dortmund. We're up for it. We're ready. We wanted it more, and eventually got the win. So, Gio, what are your thoughts on this game?
Arguably one of the. I know they were talking about how like Newcastle would do, in the group of death, but I think everybody kind of allowed Dortmund to kind of fly under the radar. I thought they're great. You really can't count this team out, no matter what group they're in, let alone the group of death. I thought, in terms of team-wise, I think, shape, I think they hold the shape the best. Young stars-wise, they have a fair amount of young stars. Going into the game, even Newcastle, they didn't have really too many chances, and the chances they got were very almost mediocre. Not much that they could do, except for that the one, I think it was Joe Linton up front, chance in front of the net. But apart from that, nothing really worried Dortmund. And then you have, Adeyemi, who obviously a great dump for the fast break. That 2-on-1 fast break, and then Julian Brandt being a right footer, finishing that cleanly on his left foot is just, everything you ask for. Just very fundamental football. You don't really have to worry about it. And we can even talk about the first goal, things going Dortmund's way. They were the more aggressive team. They were the aggressors of the game, I find. Going forward, yes, some bounces went their way in order for the kind of the build-up to happen. But the fact of the matter is they were ready for it. Sabitzer, I do miss that guy, though, in a Man U kit. Sabitzer, I'm glad you're on to better things. I'm glad you don't have to go through the mental distress I'm going through. But no, for him to, any attacking player, any midfield player might have wanted to kind of take that shot and put it on net. But for him to calmly cut it back, try to find someone in the middle, and full crew to score his first Champions League goal, I thought all in all, very well-rounded game. Dortmund definitely showed why they are consistently one in this competition and consistently make it deep in this competition as well.
Yeah. On that note, Mac, I know I said it was Dortmund were definitely on the front foot a lot in the first goal, like Gio mentioned. There were some lucky bounces, but honestly, it felt like they were willing the ball to go into the back of the net with just non-stop energy and forward momentum that eventually set up Füllkrug for his goal. Was that more, I guess, mainly Dortmund playing well, or would it also be Newcastle? Honestly, haven't really seen this as much this season, but just not great defending. It looked like the distance between their back line and midfield was too far apart. They weren't really following their man, and honestly, it felt like they weren't ready for this game. What were your takes on the game overall?
I look at it a little bit differently. Defensively, they were a little bit in a shambles, but for me, the question was more so offensively. They failed to score in either of their away Champions League games, and it felt like, especially because Dortmund did get the breakthrough with the first, Newcastle had to press more and more and more to be able to get back into the game, and they were just lacking that little bit of oomph up top that you would have expect. So a player like Isak, which no disrespect to a player like Callum Wilson or Joe Linton, or even Livramento, but they're not really, I would say, high quality attacking players that you might expect going in the Champions League game away at Dortmund, which is an intimidating place to play in for anybody. I do give their full respect. They were sustaining a lot of injuries, and that's something that we had talked about. I think off pod. But that's why in this game you would have liked to see like an Anthony Gordon, Miguel Almiron, them to be able to start the game. You're saying you want to be able to rotate, get some rest, but this type of fixture, especially not that, again, they're still in with the shout to be able to make it out of the group, but they definitely have a hole to dig themselves out of. Versus if they got all 3 points here, they could have been a little bit more comfortable going into the later fixtures. So a little bit worrying from them. And I think that more so offensively is what caused them the issues and having to be able to press forward, which led, of course, to the second goal for Dortmund. So that's my more questions for them. For Dortmund, you have to say, again, they do it again and again. A player like Adeyemi, even though he didn't get on the score sheet himself, for me, I thought he was the most threatening player, was just ability to be able to cut in. I think it was Lewis Hall who started at fullback for Newcastle. It seemed like he had no shot in staying anywhere near him. Adeyemi could really do whatever he wants. And Julian Brand, to be honest, I'm going to take this outside the realm of football. If he does one more One Piece related anime celebration, I'm going to buy a jersey. Okay, you why? You don't have to do that. You don't have to. I appreciate you. I love it. And every single like time he goes on Instagram and he does the post of whoever animated that for him. Okay, huge fan. Okay, he's probably the second footballer I actually follow on Instagram because of shit like that. So full credit to him. Great to see him in the score sheet. Phenomenal finish. Weak foot cross. Selfishly, though, I know, again, I take it because I want the celebration. Should have passed. Any 2-1 and you don't pass, I look a little bit suspect on you. Looking at you, Garnacho, you're lucky to hold and finish that for you, you lucky son of a bitch. Yeah, dangerous. But again, this Dortmund team, they're still in with the shout. So lovely to see. And to be honest, selfishly, a result I did want to see. Because this, again, fully opens up the group where anything could happen. There could be utter chaos. And you always want to go into the last 2 match weeks, even in the last game with anyone could still finish top of the group. So lovely to see how these 2 games end up playing out. And Dortmund will full credit and deserved all 3 points against very an impotent Newcastle side.
Yeah, just quickly on Julian Brand, one of the players I very much like from this Borussia Dortmund team, and now it got me thinking. Germany's got a lot of different options for a number 10. You of course have the likes of Julian Brandt. You have Florian Wirtz, who's killing it at Leverkusen. Musiala, of course, is going to be the number 10 that starts for Germany, likely because he plays for Bayern Munich. But, you have a lot of options now. Even Kai Havertz, who you could say he's kind of a number 10. So I guess maybe that's a bigger problem for Germany to have. But it's just interesting that these types of profiles are popping up a lot more in the Bundesliga. Could be maybe a different play style that happens more so there. But just wanted to mention, of course, Julian Brandt, great finish, love the celebration, and great performance overall. Now, question for you, Gio, is what do you think will really happen? Of course, Dortmund now top of the group. You called it from before. Their experience, I guess, is really dragging them above all 3 other teams in this group of death here. But do Newcastle have any hope? Currently last, PSG are second last in the group. Kind of funny that both clubs that have seen an influx of money to hopefully win the Champions League are bottom 2 teams in this group. Just thought it was funny there. But what do you think Newcastle do from this point forward?
I think they're very much so still in it. I think like much of the other teams did. AC Milan, for example, they were kind of in a slump themselves. We were talking about that earlier. But yeah, there's no AC Milan hasn't proved enough to say that okay, we're on an uptrend and we're gonna consistently bang out these games. So I think they're very much so still in question whether they can keep up this form or not. Obviously, great win against PSG, but again, with the Italian league, with Serie A and the Champions League, they haven't proven themselves to be, consistent performers. And Newcastle, obviously injury ridden as well. We talk about their depth, but now their depth is sort of, kind of in question because of the injuries. They can still tough out, points and hope for the best. They can still they've done it before. There's not saying that they can't do it again. They just have to take it each game as a game. They can't look at any game above another, or they're just gonna put too much pressure on themselves. They beat them before, so there's no saying that they can't beat them again.
Okay, well, that's definitely something that we're gonna keep an eye out for, and we'll definitely preview more so when the next round of games come through. But now let's focus our attention to this weekend, Mac. I think the biggest game of the weekend, without a doubt, will be Chelsea versus Manchester City. Manchester City, off the back of the 3-0 win against Young Boys in the Champions League, they will be looking to extend their lead at the top of the table against Chelsea, who, yes, they did come off that win against Spurs, 9-men Spurs on Monday. This fixture, though, has not been so favorable to Chelsea. Man City winning both fixtures in the Premier League last season against Chelsea, and then beating them in the EFL Cup third round and FA Cup third round last year. So, in all, beat them 4 times last year comprehensively. Chelsea didn't score a single goal in that time. What are your expectations for this upcoming fixture, though?
I expect Man City to come out and obliterate this Chelsea team. To be completely honest, I would be surprised if Chelsea really have any shot. A couple of reasons why. Firstly, if we just look at the historical thing, you did bring up a couple key stats. Man City have won their last 6 meetings with Chelsea in all competitions by aggregate score of 10-0. So it's not been close. It's not a competition. It's not a match that Chelsea really find themselves favorably. And even Man City have won their last 3 Premier League away games against Chelsea. So this individual fixture playing at Stamford Bridge, a rough look for them. So, and then if you put it to the cherry on the top of how do you generally exploit this Man City team, where have teams been most successful in them, and transition when you can be clinical with your opportunities. And that is not the hallmark of this Chelsea team by any means. They need to play against 9 to score a couple of goals. So if they're playing against a full 11 against a Man City team that's going to high press the hell out of them, and you're going to suggest like a Nicholas Jackson to go a 1-on-2 against John Stones and Ruben Diaz, good luck. I think you have to have a phenomenal game for any shot for Chelsea to come out. From their midfield, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo probably have to have a 10 out of 10 performance, with either a Sterling, maybe a Mudryk, or a Cole Palmer, one of those other players chipping in and being a little bit creative sense and getting on the ball and retaining possession to give their defense a little bit of a break against this Man City team. I think the worst news for them, though, to be honest, is that Erling Haaland was able to line up and play against Young Boys in the Champions League. There's no reason why he needed to play in the game. That he was coming off an ankle injury and he was subbed off at halftime, and they still put him out for the game. So he seems to be fit and fine. That probably would have been their favorite opportunities. If he doesn't play, what does Man City do? Looks like he's fine. So I would be surprised if this game doesn't finish at least 2-0 Man City. Maybe arguably, if we could play an over/under of over 2.5 goals, I might actually take the over. I'll be honest. I might take the over for Man City. Ooh. The goal difference between them beating Chelsea, if that was the line. Well, interesting. I don't gamble. I know you two do. I don't. So again, I'm saying if I was a gambling man, I don't mean to call you guys out. I apologize. I'm speaking out of turn. Allegedly, you guys gamble. Correction. Let's take that back. Let's take a step back. But if I was in that position, aggregate Man City win by over 2.5 goals, I would go with the over.
Well, something we don't hear often, Gio Mac betting the over, so he's very confident on that, and of course has to be confident with Man City's dominant display against Young Boys. I'm not sure if you guys saw one of the the defenders from Young Boys came up to Haaland at halftime and asked for his jersey. If that's the case, what else can you expect? So with that being said, Gio, do you really agree with Mac there that it should be a City game, even though it's at Chelsea, at Stamford Bridge, and Chelsea have been playing decently well against, I guess you could say, your traditional top 6 teams so far this season? Is there a chance for them? What are your thoughts?
No. I just think you. The thing is, they benefit off say a counterattack or mistakes from other teams. One, you're playing against Man City. I doubt there are going to be many mistakes. 2, you have to have the ball in order to attack. You're not going to have the ball much. Yes, their midfield based on names, sound great, but they just haven't proven themselves in the Prem yet to say that this midfield three is going to dominate or go challenge for challenge against the Man City side. Yes, Caicedo is good. Yes, Enzo Fernandez is good. But Man City is proven. So you kind of have to go where the proof is in the pudding type scenario. They are good. They have proven that they are good, and they've proven that they can win games in various different ways. Even if Pep wanted to isolate Jeremy Doku out there, I think he would have a field day of no matter who is marking him. I don't care who it is. I don't care who Chelsea wants to pull out from their academy, U23s, whatever the case may be. Nobody's really guarding Jeremy Doku like that after the performance he had last game. I think his confidence is sky high, and the fact of the matter is everybody's scoring. It's not just Haaland. Everybody is scoring. So that makes the attacking threat that much more dangerous. So Chelsea's gonna have to worry about that because their back line a little shaky as well. So Chelsea have a lot to worry about this weekend, and it's not just Erling Haaland this year round. So they good luck. That's all I can really say. Good luck. As a Man United fan, I felt the wrath already. Hopefully it's a little worse than the time they faced Man United, which is very possible, I think. So yeah, nice. Good luck, Chelsea.
Of course, Haaland is going to be keeping everyone on their toes from that Chelsea side, but I did want to highlight as well a player that has performed quite well over the last couple games for Foden. I think he was definitely on the score sheet against Young Boys. I think he also scored in the last game against Bournemouth as well, playing quite well off that right-hand side, which is not necessarily, I think, where you would normally start him, but of course, with injuries and switches to that system, Pep has started him there a lot more, and so I'm interested to see how he's going to perform. If he's going to be really stretching out the play on the right-hand side, I don't think so. I think he's going to be coming in and trying to link up in with your Bernardo Silva, your Hollands, your whoever's on the left-hand side, whether it's Jack Grealish or Jeremy Doku. I just think that he's going to be given that free role that with Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, Conor Gallagher. I don't know if they've really, apart from maybe James Maddison, who, it was a short game that he played against Chelsea. I don't think they've come across a player that's going to just be free and roam everywhere. So I'm interested to see what kind of positions he picks up and how Chelsea defend or approach this defensive matchup. Just because if you're really relying on Caicedo to maybe man mark him, then you're going to be exposed because, of course, City have the attacking prowess. They're able to control the ball and draw you out and just slip balls in behind for on runners. Just interested to see how that's going to go. Of course, Haaland's going to be a big test for whoever's at the back there. Thiago Silva likely will start with either Dizazi or maybe even, of course, Cole has played a lot as well, but no one really screams Haaland stopper in that team. So not really expecting much from them there. So that's going to be something fun to watch there. I guess, Mac, just to finish it off, any other players that, we mentioned Haaland, Foden, any other players that you're interested to watch from either side for this game that, might have a big say in the total outcome for this game?
No one else, I think, from your list of players screams to mind here. I think will be interesting, again, is where defensively, because now I think that the one thing that we've learned about Man City, arguably their most irreplaceable player is Rodri in the center of midfield. I'm very curious to see how Chelsea line up against him individually in that midfield battle, how they can address kind of what he does and dictates tempo. I think it could be fun if you, I know this may be a shout, but to do not too dissimilar to what Al Ferguson did with Jisung Park and Messi in that second half Champions League final. Joe, you may recall. Just stick somebody on him. Man mark him the entire match. Don't let him dictate the play. I would say I would be very interested to see if Chelsea play a like a 4-2-3-1 position, and that middle offensive midfielder isn't really there, is really just there in all but name, and his whole job is to just man mark him out of the game. I think that could be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see if someone's able to figure out how to succeed against this Man City team. Is that the player you maybe target to completely eliminate? Less so, because a lot of teams have been focusing on Haaland, and previously before Kevin De Bruyne, fairly enough. Those two together are potentially lethal, though KDB not there. Haaland, let's be fair to say, has had in missed games, I would say. What can you do about kind of stopping their tempo? And that, for me, that starts with Rodri. So I'm interested to see what happens if Pochettino has an idea about that.
I think that screams Gio Conor Gallagher at that 10 spot, just man mark with that top energy against Rodri. Do we think he's gonna have the impact that we hope he does? You know, he has shown decent glimpses. Can he, continue to perform well and maybe keep a place at Chelsea? Or do you think, regardless of what happens, Chelsea has plans for him moving forward? Likely not with the current Chelsea team that will be moving forward. What do you think there, Gio?
I don't think Conor Gallagher deserves what he's going through right now. I think he's much better than what is going on at Chelsea. He obviously has the talent and the capability to start week in, week out for a Premier League club, if not a Premier League club. I still think he has the talent to do so, and it shows because the struggles that Chelsea was going through. Oftentimes he was the only one really trying to push the tempo and really make attempting to be a box to box midfielder, or doing his best to kind of get things going and trying to get everybody around him sort of focus into the game. I think I've been quite high on him since Crystal Palace. So have you, Ray? But even I just can't see it. I think they'll just go out and buy someone else in the midfield and splash more cash. Because again, they still have players that are out that are still coming back in the midfield. Key signing from Liverpool. I mean, not Liverpool, Southampton, as we remember. So I don't think he has a place there. But I'm happy he doesn't have a place there because I think he deserves better.
Yeah, well, I think we're still yet to see what Romeo Lavia can produce for this Chelsea team, but likely not in this game, which we will definitely keep an eye out on and cover in our next podcast. So this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at houseof_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be after the Chelsea Man City game, where we cover that game and also the action from this weekend's Premier League. But until then, thank you, Mac, for joining us tonight.
Peace out.
Thank you, Gio.
Let's just get out of the Champions League, boys.
See you guys soon.